very much, Mr. Waita, for that presentation. I think it's certainly the government has put a lot of thought into this housing pillar, and we've listened before from P.S. Hinga, and listened to you today. There's no doubt that a lot of brain power has gone into this. The only thing that I would like, and obviously there's no doubt that balancing social welfare and capitalism can be a very delicate thing, because it will lead to also market disruption of existing enterprise. My question is, 500,000 houses targeted. President Kenyatta is on his second term, and in his second term he will need to be held to account on what he promised to deliver. My view is, looking at the 500,000 houses and the number of months left before 2022, for it to be attained in the fashion in which it was sold initially, you will need to be deploying 11,200 houses per month, which we all know is impossible. My question to you is, has the government considered revising this target downwards and giving us a figure to which we can hold you to account at the end of his tenure? Thank you.
My name is Jan Mutai, one of the members of a resident association in Kilimani. Now, what I would like a little more elaboration is the livability question, because what we have noticed in Kilimani, people come and put up, they go from horizontal development to vertical development, but they are not livable, because they are not addressing the open space for the children, they are not addressing the mobility issues, so that like now we are in Salit, we're in Salit Center. I would have loved to have, and I live near Junction, I would have loved to have taken a bicycle to come here. So the issue is in these livable spaces that are being created. We would like to know how the mobility question is being addressed. Then equally, the question of sustainability, environmental sustainability. How is it linking with our rivers? And if you look at the citizens of Nairobi, 42% are below 18 years. 35% are below 30. Between 18 and 35, they are 35%. So 77%. So I like what you said, that we are building for the future. We already have the future here. 77% of Nairobians are that future. So the youth need sports to play. I like what you said about recreation. So I'm hoping in the flagship project, you will have green spaces for the children to play around. You will have a stadium. So we need that elaboration. And I think my final comment is actually communication to us. I think you have whetted our appetite. Please find time to come and engage with us in our residence, so that those of us who invested in the 80s can now also invest in this decade. Thank you very much.
I think I like the challenge that we need to think about the future, but it's very hard to think about the future when we're struggling to live in the present. Especially right now, Kenyans feel that we are caving under a very heavy tax burden. So when we are asked to pay a little bit more for, say, for instance, the housing tax, it's a bit hard to imagine and think about the future. So I think what we really want are safeguards, that there will be accountability, and also knowing the opportunities for corruption that come with such massive infrastructure ventures. So please tell us a little bit more about accountability. We've heard about really beautiful plans and what the government wants to do, but tell us a little bit more about accountability.
I am very happy to hear what Kenya is doing to achieve the Big Four agenda. I just want to share maybe some of the experience of Colombia. I think it could be useful for this process that you are going through now. We had a very important affordable housing policy for the last years, and the new government is going to continue, of course, this purpose. And just to let you all know that we did almost 2 million affordable houses in the past 8 years. Out of which I mean, beside that, we had over 500,000 also free houses for very low income families, and mainly women who are some great beneficiaries of these free houses. And how we did it, it was a combination of different sectors. For instance, the banking sector, the construction sector. And what happened is that with this affordable housing policy, we were able also to boost the construction sector, and we generate over like 1 million new jobs also just working on the affordable housing. And we were able between 2005 and 2017 to reduce also our index of multidimensional poverty. So it's very important like to have a combination of these different sectors speaking together, working together to make sure that that you can boost the project. And at the same time, I heard today many concerns about planning. Planning is a very important aspect of having a successful outcome of these type of projects. Risk assessment, but taking into account also some of the global challenge that we have, climate change. We have to, our countries, especially we are not in the tropics, we have to look very closely on adaptation measures. So by that, we have to look on the type of materials that we are going to use. We have to look on supply of materials. We have to look on some of these resources that are very limited resources, and at the same time environmental protection. How are we going to protect the water catchment areas? And sometimes we think that the rivers are just the ones that we see when it rains and where the water runs through. But remember that you have an underground water riverine system, which is very important also for providing water to the population. And another very important aspect is to look also on cultural and social values. Don't leave that behind, because that is something very important to boost the tourism sector. Today, your tourism sector is mainly dependent on going to the national parks and maybe a few tourism going to Mount Kenya or the coastal areas. But remember that tourism have different, you can use the different scenarios to boost your tourism. For instance, in Colombia, in the last 5 years, we moved our tourism from 2.7 million to now 7 million international tourists. So don't discard that as a very important aspect. So your development have to be guided also to trigger other economic sectors, not only to, of course, to reduce poverty. Reduce in Colombia, we took more than 5 million people of extreme poverty just working on these different social programs. So the Big Four agenda, they go together. They are not isolated, and you must work it together so you can have a very successful government program. Thank you so much. And Colombia is willing to provide any type of support, technical advice. We have this experience, and I think we should use it. And also you could get in contact with some of our developers to learn from them and maybe partner with them. Thank you.
I think the most important thing is the commitment the government has made. That is the first very important step. And I think just like what we have heard from the main speakers today, the more we can, first of all, make it faster, so that even if it is happening in one part of the country, other people in the part of the rest of the country can be able to know that it's a reality. I think that's what is very important. And then another thing is that to get somebody like Joka Waiter to come and talk about it to us, I think it's very important, because when you see something, then you are able to believe. So we really appreciate, because we know you are very busy, that you are able to find time and come and say exactly what is at the heart and the center of this matter. So we want to support it. and say that the more that we can get also the housing moving all over the country, passing the message on behalf of government, I think it will help a lot. Thank you very much. My name is Yusuf Chanjo. I was working with them before I joined politics.
To Chairman of the Chamber, Kiprono Kitoni, you are right. The targets are very ambitious, and deliberately so. But what we felt was we could not start by just building, because we needed to really do an overhaul to the framework. Because this framework has now opened up the housing away from just being a government-driven project to allowing private sector to now play an active role. Our biggest task today is building a credible demand list and providing a credible system to ensure that people can get those houses in a fair way. That's the real premium that government has today. Because for anybody developing, and you have a guaranteed off-taker. So you, for example, I always say we can walk and chew gum. The building of the houses is not sequential. It can happen at the same time, because as we speak, we've got 20 agreements done with county governments, very definitive MOUs where they have identified pieces of land. We have committed to water and sanitation projects. We have the Kenya Urban Support Program, which we are working with the county governments to allow us to extend sewer infrastructure, which is really one of the most critical enablers. We have sat with each infrastructure ministry and redefined their budgets to support them. So today, Charles Keter is not building electricity lines for the sake of Ministry of Energy. He's building electricity lines that go to identified housing programs. He is building electricity lines that go to hospitals, which are part of the Universal Healthcare Program. He's building electricity lines to support industrial zones. So everything we are doing now is being repurposed to support the Big Four program. In terms of interest, today we have one developer, for instance, within the UN family that has committed to 100,000 units. UNOPS. All they are waiting for is to be shown where. But they have committed to 100,000 units. We have other developers who have come in at government-to-government level, expressing an interest. So we have developers, parastatals, let's say, from the government of Singapore. And you know Singapore's history and track record with housing. They are very keen to come in and build a number of units, and also to showcase the technology that they have in place. It may be unrealistic to say that you have 500,000 houses occupied by 2022, but you'll certainly be well on the way by that period, and many of them should be under construction by that time. So I just want you to have the comfort that we are not backing down from our numbers. Actually, what we're doing is trying to spread the load a bit better, which is why we've taken such a keen interest in the law to ensure that we empower other players to contribute to this. I hope that answers at least the first question. Will it be disruptive to existing investments? I don't think so. Because the development guideline is not just purely for social housing, it's also for affordable housing. The social housing category, we feel as government, we will do it on our own, because it's our responsibility to deal with the slum upgrading and other issues. Those other projects really is private sector housing. And we think that that is the cure that this town needs. It is our duty to close down developers who have shortchanged citizens. So if they are going to go bankrupt because they sold a substandard project to people, then so be it. We really must set new standards for housing. The development guidelines, if you go through them, will tell you the space, because you have to build a community. People go to church. Where is the space for, for that sort of development? Kids need to go to school. We have allowed for space for public schools. The county governments have the first right of refusal on the schools. We would want ideally to see a public school in that space, if not possible, an ECD facility in that place. This is early childhood development, so early kindergarten and early year development facilities. We've also left space for recreational activities. Now, I'm very cautious about this use of the word stadiums. There are no stadiums, Bwana Mutai, as part of the housing program, but they are green spaces. And to a more fundamental question is that the government is now taking a much keener interest in the role of urban planning and zoning, working with the county governments, because we must provide space for people to walk, for people to ride bicycles, and to do so without having worrying about whether they'll reach the other end alive. And that's a reality, because most of our roads today have not been designed with that in mind. Will it happen overnight? No. But is somebody looking at it? Yes. Bwana Okach, maybe I'll come to you as last, but I can give you an indication. As you know, Kibera has various villages. So you have Lainisaba, you have Olympic, you have the Nubi zone, you have Gatakwira, you have others inside there. We have taken a lot of time to engage with the landowners. Now, one of the places where there is certainty about land ownership is within the Nubi held lands. And we will be going there in the coming weeks with the leaders to go and kick off a housing program championed by the Nubi community, because they have understood how the land is segregated, they have title under their community trust land, and we are able then to transact. Dealing with the other pieces of land might take a little bit more time, because as you know, Kibera has a very complex land ownership arrangement, which cannot be resolved in one city. Bwana Mutai, and I don't know, many of you may not know, Bwana Mutai was one of Kenya's leading representatives into the world's postal and telecommunication space. So I knew him when I started off my career. He may not remember me. Mobility within those environments, again, is within the development framework, at least within those controlled developments. The issue about environmental concerns, a lot of the issues around the use of green energy, solar, recycling, use of water, wastewater, what will happen to that water, how is it discharged, in what way is it discharged into the main sewer lines, is it before it goes through a biodigester, or, you know, so you can see from the guidelines that we've taken that into consideration. Sheila, one of the big comforts about this program is that it is not purely us as government. You know, we know our weaknesses in terms of large infrastructure projects and the different interests that pull from left to right. But that is not to say that we have not given this much thought. The reason why we are creating a policy framework is because the role of government is very minimal. So if you take a piece of land, for example, we are working right now to shift ownership of certain pieces of land to the National Treasury, because the National Treasury will be the government custodian of this land. The developer then comes, and by then the developers cannot get a lien over the land. So the developer will not be able to charge that property for private interest. The only security they will get is the offtake agreement, which is a bankable piece of security. So they will not be able to charge. So the role of government, aside from providing the land and access and guaranteeing the offtake, the real opportunity for manipulation may be in the allocation of houses. And that's why we are trying to remove the human element and make it more of a digitized system. This is part of the stakeholder engagement going round. The proposals are within the regulations for the Kenya Housing Development Fund. So you will see that a lot of effort has been made. if there are incidences again of corruption or misappropriation of funds, those will be dealt with as we are now dealing with all other incidences. That can only be a post-mortem discussion. Where something may have happened, we deal with it. But in terms of putting checks and balances into place up front, I think we are doing our best to ensure that these funds are not misappropriated. I think that's it. Ambassador, thank you very much for your inputs and comments. I think Patrick here is more than ready. He is the SI unit for housing in government. So he's the person we all turn to when we want to know what's been going on in housing. So ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you very much. I would like to declare the 3rd Kara Business Expo and Conference officially open. Thank you.
That's good.